Hi everyone, I hope you guys are all well. We've had some absolutely insane weather here in the UK. It's been like 27, well, probably between about 27 and 30, 31 degrees every day for nearly, well, three odd weeks now, and it's been insane. And yesterday afternoon was the first time that we've had rain in nearly a month, and it was glorious. Absolutely glorious. But because of the weather, I found it really, really difficult to read because I've just been so uncomfortable. But luckily, I've had a book that has been an absolute joy to read anyway. I've read it a couple of times before, and it kind of felt it was really because the way that she writes this book, it's so easy to read and it's so easy to get yourself completely immersed in it. I was really kind of happy that the book I picked was this one, and that book is Courtiers by Lucy Worsley. Now, this is the hardback version. The paperback looks very, very different from this cover, just so you're aware. But this is about the secret history of Kensington Palace, because Lucy Worsley is a chief curator of Hampton Court Palace, and she basically she was going around looking at the building and all this lot, and she absolutely adores, on one of the main stairways is this painting. I don't know if you can see this very well, but it's of all the individual courtiers of George II's court, and she was really intrigued by it. She went, you know what, I'd quite like to write a pamphlet or a leaflet or something, or do an audio thing for tourists to explain who these people are. And so she started doing her research, and 4 years later this book came out. She didn't intend it to be a book, it just turned out to be a book, and it's so intriguing. As you know, the blurb says, where is it? So amongst them are a vice-chamberlain with many vices, a maid of honour with the clandestine marriage, a pushy painter, a drunken equerry, a wild boy, a penniless poet, a dwarfed comedian, 2 mysterious turbaned Turks, and a number of discarded royal mistresses. And she tells a story of the courtiers. And if you think about it, courtiers aren't really, if you look back in history, or if you look back in dramas or whatever, film about various kings and queens at various times, the focus is always on the royals, never on the courtiers, unless the courtiers somehow wound up in the story. So I'll give you an example. Queen Elizabeth I, she was head over heels, in love with Robert Dudley, who was a childhood friend who she just absolutely adored. But he was married. His wife, Amy, died in a mysterious way. She was found at the bottom of a staircase. She wasn't very well, and there was a question of, was she murdered? Was it suicide? Whatever. And Elizabeth had a lady in waiting called Lettice, and to her absolute horror, she had to kind of banish Robert Dudley for a while because of the scandal. But when he was welcomed back, he brought along his new wife, Lettice, with him. And yeah, she went crazy. So Lettice is always referred to in various books about Elizabeth, but no other courtiers really. So it's really interesting to have a book that is just solely about these people. Right, so as I was saying earlier, the way that Lucy engages you is absolutely fantastic. I love the fact that Lucy's one of my favourite female historians, and I love the fact that she looks at things that other historians don't. So, for example, as with this book, in a great palace in the middle of the George II's reign, and his issues that he had with his dad, and of course then the ongoing issues he had with his son, and yada yada yada. That's not her focus. She wants to look at the other people who were in the room and how they got there and who they were as people and what they were willing to do to save their necks when certain circumstances meant that they would be in trouble, or what they would do for the king, how loyal they were and such. She also did another book, which is actually, I think, my favourite, called If Walls Could Talk. And she looks at the history of the home. She dissects each room of the house, and she goes through the entire history of how that room developed to where we are now. I love that she does these things, and she is a very engaging person. I've met her a few times. The last time she was at Cheltenham Literature Festival, I forgot my book, so I couldn't get her to sign my book, which was really annoying. I've got her to sign all of my books apart from the most recent Jane Austen one. So I don't know, maybe she's there this year. I might take my Jane Austen one as well and just say, could you possibly sign this as well? But anyway, she is very engaging. She really likes to set a scene, and if you've ever seen any of her TV appearances, I really strongly recommend that you do see that. But if you see any of them, she comes across a really engaging person. And she writes exactly the way that she comes across in those as well. I especially liked her the Six Wives of Henry VIII series called Six Wives, which was absolutely fantastic, and I've recommended it a couple of times on this channel when I've talked about Tudor books. But yeah, so I picked up this book. I remember when this was published, and I started flicking through it, and I thought, oh, this is quite interesting. And that's October she came to the Cheltenham Literature Festival, and it's funny because she wasn't a well-known historian, and there was probably maybe about 30 of us in this tiny tent, and then the following year, which by the time she'd been on TV and everything, she got bumped up to Cheltenham Town Hall, and it was packed, absolutely packed of people. So I think that kind of shows her popularity and such. So this book, I love how she immerses you straight into the world. She sets the scene. She tells you all, various things that are going on in the world, just generally in the world, so you can understand from the pupil point of view, and then from the palace point of view of what's going on. My favourite courtier in this book is Peter the Wild Boy. He was a feral child who got found near the palace, as it were. He was kind of pulled in by all of the footmen and such, and the king just kind of went, oh, I like him, I'm going to keep him as my little pet, and so kept him. And I'm going to read you an excerpt from this so you can understand Lucy's language and everything. So, and it's, about Peter. So here we go. On the evening of the 7th of April, 1726, the king and courtiers were gathered as usual in the great drawing room at St. James's Palace. The room was alive with their chatter, a sort of chit-chat or small talk, which was unutterably trivial in its topics: the uniforms of the armies of foreign princes, the minor relations of important people, balls and masquerades. As usual, the crowd was alive to any breath of scandal, and anyone remotely notorious enduring the customary ordeal of ogling, whispering, and glancing. Everything seemed just as normal. But a sensational event would make this drawing room the most memorable in a long while. The doors suddenly burst open to a blur of bodies, arms, and legs. In came a brace of footmen, bearing between them a curly-haired boy. He was perhaps 12 years old. He had a friendly grin, but there was something decidedly odd about this youth. In the first place, he seemed not the least embarrassed at finding himself in the midst of such a fashionable assembly. Once lowered to the drawing-room floor, he crouched down and scuttled about using his arms like a chimp, and instead of bowing and scraping to the Lord Chamberlain and taking his place in the circle, the young man boldly scampered straight up to the king. The courtiers were scandalized by his ostentatious lack of ceremony. This was their first encounter with Peter, the curious wild boy of the woods, a feral child. Peter was a captivating character, green-eyed with a particularly bushy bushy brush of dark brown hair. He had very good strong teeth and was prone to bouts of irrepressible laughter. In stark contrast to the fops of the drawing room, Peter preferred to go about naked and had no table manners, did not understand the use of a bed. Strangest of all, he could speak neither English nor German. In fact, the wild boy had absolutely no language at all. Now, showing great indulgence, the old king began to play with his new toy. He relished Peter's refreshing lack of familiarity with the drawing room world. The courtiers watched, fascinated, as Peter first encountered the fabric of their everyday lives. Princess Caroline encouraged him to try on a glove, and then let him examine the sparkling gems on her black velvet gown. Everyone shared Peter's delight when he discovered her gold watch that struck the hours, which was held to strike at his ear. Peter was about as far removed from the other courtiers, in background, in behaviour, as he could possibly be. He provided amusement for everyone with his comical ways, but his presence also sparked off an engrossing philosophical debate, the kind of clever conversation that all courtiers enjoyed from time to time. The occasional intellectual dispute signalled that the British court was sophisticated and superior, a heavyweight contender amongst the courts of Enlightenment Europe. Peter's very existence raised the fascinating question of what it really meant to be human. So, I absolutely adore Lucy's work. The way that she weaves a story, the way that she just, you could kind of feel that it's a subject that she is really intrigued by, and she'd want to, be listening into those conversations and would absolutely love to be in those courts. And what's the word? I can't think what the word is. That enthusiasm, it comes across in her writing. It comes across in the way that she talks about the various things. It comes across in all of her works, not just this one. And that engagement, that excitement, it really brings history and our own human feelings about history together, and it's wonderfully refreshing. She's one of a group of newer historians who don't follow the old way. If you look at like David Starkey or something, I suppose you could say Antonia Fraser as well. If you look back in their books and everything, they're very of a time when history was very academic. It was documentaries that you could say are a bit dry, that kind of slow walking towards the camera, giving a monologue, as it were, kind of thing. That kind of way. But what Lucy goes, she's like, hi, I'm really interested, come on, let's explore this. And it's really refreshing, it's really lovely, and it brings history to life in a whole other way. She's written, as I said, various books about history, but she's also got into YA writing as well, writing about historical figures in YA and connecting to a younger audience, which is fantastic. So I really strongly recommend anything by Lucy. I always enjoy going back to her books. I get really excited when I get to read them. So even though it's been such a hellish couple of weeks of crazy working hours, so uncomfortable, getting home and just lying down on a cold floor trying to chill out, I found it so difficult to read, but I've gotten through Courtiers and it's been an absolute joy to read. So I strongly recommend Courtiers. You go through kind of like every emotion, I think, also with Lucy's work. You've got the great highs, you've got the great lows, and Princess Caroline in this book. Oh, the way that she died was just awful, absolutely awful. It's so sad to read. But Lucy writes history, whether it's happy, whether it's sad, whatever. She writes it so beautifully and with such respect, and I admire her for that. So thank you, Lucy, for writing your books. Thank you for your TV series as well. And yeah, check out Courtiers by Lucy Worsley. Okay, that's everything I think of to say about Courtiers. I had a fab time rereading it. I will reread it again and again and again and again and again. And I hope you guys look into it too. If you have read this book or any of Lucy's work, what do you think of them? I'd love it if you put a comment in the comments box below, or you give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And I'll be back soon to announce which book I'm going to be reading next. All right then, guys. Bye.